At 55, he found himself stuck in a job he despised, in a shopping mall he saw as a monument to futile consumerism. His critical gaze swept the atrium, silently judging every passerby. To Hank, the world was divided into simple categories, those who followed the rules and those who broke them. His experience had made him cynical, seeing potential criminals at every corner. Teenagers. Laughter irritated him. Large families bothered him, and anyone who didn't fit his narrow standard of normality was immediately suspicious. Hank didn't realize how his prejudice affected his work, convinced his distrust was just necessary vigilance. Amelia strolled through the stores with genuine interest, her eyes shining at the colorful displays. Hank watched her from a distance, his suspicion growing with each of her movements. Amelia's curly, voluminous hair, dark skin, and elegant clothing didn't fit the usual profile Hank expected at the mall. He discreetly followed her, convinced she was planning something illicit. Oblivious to the hostile surveillance, Amelia examined products, chatted animatedly with salespeople, and took notes on her phone. Her cheerful and confident presence contrasted with Hank's grim demeanor, interpreting every innocent gesture as a possible sign of ill intent. Hank's prejudice blinded him to Amelia's true nature, a respected professional visiting the mall. A store alarm blared down the corridor, triggering a moment of chaos. Hank, already on alert, saw his chance. Without hesitation, he quickly approached Amelia, who was near the store exit. "Stop right there," he shouted, his voice laden with accusation. Amelia, surprised, turned with a look of confusion. Curious shoppers formed a circle, watching the scene unfold. Hank, blinded by his biases, began interrogating Amelia aggressively, ignoring her protests of innocence. The store manager arrived, looking nervous and uncertain. Amelia remained calm, but her eyes revealed a mix of hurt and indignation at the blatant injustice of the situation. With surprising dignity, Amelia faced Hank's accusations. "Sir," she began, her voice firm and controlled, "I understand your concern, but I assure you there's been a mistake." She opened her purse, calmly showing each item, including detailed receipts of her purchases, to everyone's surprise. The embarrassed store manager confirmed the alarm had been triggered by mistake. At that moment, the real culprit was caught trying to flee through another exit. The crowd, once curious, now looked at Hank with disapproval. Amelia, with impeccable grace, offered a sympathetic smile to Hank, whose face now burned with shame. Her calm and integrity shone, leaving Hank diminished and exposed. In the cramped security office, Hank stared at the floor while his supervisor, Mr. Martinez, expressed his disappointment. "Hank, this is unacceptable," Martinez declared, his voice a mix of frustration and exhaustion. "Your behavior today not only embarrassed our team but also exposed the mall to potential legal issues." Hank tried to justify himself, but each word felt hollow, even to his own ears. Martinez continued, explaining how Hank's actions violated anti-discrimination policies and security protocols. "This is your last chance, Hank. One more incident like this, and we'll have to part ways." The threat of dismissal hung heavily in the air, forcing Hank to confront the consequences of his deep-seated prejudices. As the dust from the incident settled, a surprising revelation emerged. Amelia, with an impeccable professional stance, formally introduced herself to the mall management. "I'm Dr. Amelia Thompson, a specialist in designing inclusive commercial spaces," she announced, her voice resonating with authority. The mall director, visibly impressed, explained that Amelia had been invited to lead an innovative renovation project. Her mission was to transform the mall into a more welcoming and accessible space for all audiences. Ironically, her experience as an undercover client provided valuable insights into the areas needing improvement, especially regarding the security staff's training. Hank left the mall that night with a storm of emotions swirling in his chest. Anger, shame, and a tinge of fear for his uncertain future mingled, making each step heavy. He replayed the day's events, trying to justify his actions, but found only flaws in his judgment. Unbeknownst to Hank, Amelia had suggested a comprehensive training program for the security staff, focusing on cultural awareness and non-discriminatory approach techniques. Fate had intertwined their paths in an unexpected way. In the days to come, Hank would be challenged to confront his prejudices and grow, with Amelia playing a crucial role in his journey of personal and professional transformation. Hank arrived at work that morning, his mood still sour after recent events. Entering the employees' meeting room, he noticed an unusual buzz. Colorful posters announced a new shopping environment improvement project. Curious, he approached a group of colleagues. "It's a behavioral study," whispered Sarah, a young security guard. "Apparently, they're going to analyze how we and the customers interact." Hank frowned, suspicious. The mall manager entered, smiling enthusiastically. "Folks, we have a unique opportunity," he announced. "We've been chosen to participate in a pioneering study on social dynamics in retail environments." Hank felt a knot in his stomach. Changes were never good news in his experience, and this seemed like a big one coming. The mall auditorium was packed. A hum of anticipation filled the air. Hank shifted uncomfortably in his seat, still brooding over recent events. Suddenly, the buzz ceased. Amelia entered the stage, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice clear and confident. "I'm Dr. Amelia Thompson, and I'm honored to lead this innovative project." Hank felt his face flush, a mix of shame and irritation. The woman he had unjustly accused was now in charge. Amelia proceeded, outlining the study's objectives with eloquence and passion. Despite himself, Hank found himself paying attention, impressed by her expertise. Yet his wounded pride struggled against the reluctant admiration he began to feel. Amelia continued her presentation, her voice full of enthusiasm. "Our project," she explained, "aims to understand the complex social dynamics in retail environments." Colorful graphs appeared on the screen behind her, illustrating intriguing statistics. "We want to understand how perceptions, both of employees and customers, influence daily interactions." She paused, her eyes scanning the audience. "This includes examining how unconscious biases can affect our decisions." Hank shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "In the end," Amelia continued, "our goal is to create a more inclusive and safer environment for everyone." The room was silent, absorbing the implications. Hank felt a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Part of him wanted to dismiss all this as academic nonsense, but another part was intrigued. After the presentation, Hank was summoned to the manager's office. With a heavy heart, he entered, fearing the worst. "Hank," began the manager, his tone serious, "I'll be direct. Your participation in this study is mandatory." Hank opened his mouth to protest, but the manager raised his hand. "Consider this a chance for redemption after the recent incident." The manager softened his expression. "Hank, you have years of valuable experience. We want you to be part of this positive change." Hank felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Part of him wanted to refuse, cling to his old ways. But the reality of his situation was clear. With a resigned sigh, he nodded. "I'll do my best," he murmured, unsure if he was convincing the manager or himself. The training room was filled with mall employees, Hank among them, sitting rigidly in his chair. Amelia entered, carrying contagious energy. "Today," she began, "we're going to challenge some of our assumptions." Charts and numbers filled the screen. "Studies show that 70% of theft accusations are unfounded," she revealed. A murmur spread through the room. Amelia continued, presenting data on unconscious biases and their impacts. Hank found himself leaning forward, absorbing the information. "The most surprising thing," Amelia said, "is how small changes in our approaches can have big positive impacts." She shared success stories from other malls, where simple changes led to safer and more welcoming environments. Hank felt something change inside him. A seed of doubt about his ingrained beliefs began to sprout. Over the following weeks, Hank found himself in an internal conflict. During training sessions, he often challenged Amelia, questioning her theories and methods. "This may work in books," he argued, "but the real world is different." Amelia, however, always responded with patience and concrete data. Her ability to deconstruct arguments with logic and empathy was impressive. Despite his resistance, Hank couldn't deny Amelia's intelligence and deep knowledge. He found himself thinking about their discussions long after they ended, re-examining his beliefs. At night, at home, Hank even started researching some of the topics himself, a curiosity he hadn't felt in years slowly awakening. The seed of change, planted against his will, began to grow. It was a quiet afternoon at the mall when a sudden commotion caught everyone's attention. A crowd gathered near the food court, raised voices echoing through the corridors. Hank and Amelia, who were discussing the project nearby, ran to the scene. What they found defied both their expectations. A diverse group of customers was involved in a complex situation that didn't fit any of the scenarios they had studied. Hank instinctively wanted to act according to his old methods, but hesitated, remembering the training. Amelia, for her part, seemed momentarily perplexed, her theories being put to the test in practice. As they worked together to calm the situation, both realized that reality was more nuanced than either had imagined. This incident would be a turning point, forcing both Hank and Amelia to reevaluate their approaches and work together in unexpected ways. The shopping center, once a haven of tranquility and carefree commerce, became the stage for a series of intriguing events. High-value products began to disappear mysteriously from the shelves, leaving no obvious traces. What baffled the security team the most was the sophistication of the acts. Surveillance cameras captured nothing suspicious, alarms remained silent, and employees swore nothing unusual had happened during their shifts. The mall management was in turmoil. Emergency meetings were convened almost daily, and the atmosphere among the shopkeepers oscillated between frustration and fear. Financial losses began to accumulate, threatening the stability of some smaller stores. The mystery deepened with each new incident. Theories began circulating among employees and customers. Some talked of advanced camouflage technology. Others suspected an inside job. The truth, however, seemed to slip through the fingers of everyone who tried to grasp it. Hank, with his experience, felt particularly challenged. For the first time in years, he faced a puzzle that his old tactics seemed incapable of solving. The mall, once his familiar domain, now seemed a maze of unsettling possibilities. As the mystery of the thefts deepened, Hank found himself reverting to old thought patterns. His eyes constantly turned to a group of black teenagers who regularly frequented the mall. Dressed in trendy clothes and always in lively groups, they stood out in the suburban crowd. Hank watched their movements, convinced there was something suspicious about their loud laughter and expansive gestures. He began taking detailed notes about their arrival and departure times, the stores they visited, and even the people they talked to. In the back of his mind, a voice tried to remind him of the recent training with Amelia, the statistics that challenged exactly this kind of assumption. But years of ingrained prejudice don't disappear easily, and Hank clung to the familiarity of his suspicions. He shared his theories with other security guards, some of whom readily agreed, reinforcing his convictions. Others, however, seemed uncomfortable, casting worried glances in his direction. As the days passed without progress in the investigation, Hank's certainty grew. He began planning an approach, imagining how he could prove he was right all along. Little did he know his actions were about to trigger a series of events that would deeply challenge his worldview. Amid the growing tension at the mall and Hank's unfounded suspicions, Amelia decided to intervene with a revolutionary approach. In a tense meeting with the security team and management, she presented her proposal. "Gentlemen," Amelia began, her voice firm and gaze determined, "we need to abandon assumptions and focus on facts." She projected a series of graphs and heat maps on the screen. "I've analyzed movement patterns in the mall, customer flows, incident timings, and characteristics of the stolen items." The room fell silent, absorbing the complexity of the data presented. Amelia continued, explaining how machine learning algorithms could be used to identify subtle anomalies in the behavior of mall-goers. "We're not looking for specific individuals," she emphasized, casting a meaningful look at Hank, "but behavior patterns that deviate from the norm in specific ways." Her proposal included installing discrete sensors, analyzing anonymized credit card transactions, and even studying patterns of public Wi-Fi usage. "With this data," Amelia concluded, "we can create a behavioral profile of the perpetrators free from personal biases." The room erupted in heated discussions. Some were enthusiastic about the innovative approach, others concerned about privacy issues. Hank, for his part, felt challenged and slightly threatened by this new perspective that seemed to undermine decades of his experience. The mall management, impressed with Amelia's proposal but reluctant to completely disregard Hank's experience, made a surprising decision. The two would work together on the investigation. The announcement was met with looks of shock and disbelief from both. Hank, with his rigid posture and traditional methods, saw Amelia as an academic intruder without practical experience. Amelia, on the other hand, considered Hank an outdated obstacle to progress. However, both were dedicated professionals, and despite their differences, agreed to try. The first days were tense. Meetings were marked by heated debates over methodologies. Hank insisted on the importance of direct observation and instinct, while Amelia defended data analysis and statistical approaches. Gradually, a routine was established. In the mornings, they reviewed the data collected by Amelia's systems. In the afternoons, they patrolled the mall, with Hank pointing out behavioral nuances that the algorithms didn't capture. Surprisingly, insights began to emerge from the combination of their approaches. Hank's experience in recognizing subtle patterns of human behavior complemented Amelia's detailed analyses. Slowly, almost against their will, they began to respect each other's skills. However, the path to true collaboration was still long and full of obstacles. Each new development in the investigation brought to the surface old prejudices and new disagreements, constantly testing the fragile alliance between them. As the investigation progressed, the dynamic between Hank and Amelia became increasingly complex. Their days were a roller coaster of emotions, oscillating between moments of productive collaboration and heated arguments. Hank couldn't deny that Amelia's methods were producing results. The patterns emerging from the data were fascinating, revealing aspects of mall-goers' behavior he had never noticed in all his years of experience. He found himself eager to see the morning analyses, his mind working to connect the dots between the numbers and his own observations. Amelia, in turn, began to appreciate Hank's keen eye for details that escaped cameras and sensors. His ability to read body language and detect unusual behaviors was impressive, adding a vital layer of human understanding to the cold data. However, tensions persisted. Hank still struggled with his deep-seated prejudices, sometimes making comments that made Amelia roll her eyes in frustration. Amelia, on the other hand, occasionally got lost in abstract theories, leading Hank to question the practical applicability of her ideas. Despite this, a reluctant admiration began to grow between them. In quiet moments, when they thought the other wasn't looking, each observed the other with a mix of respect and curiosity. They were learning from each other, expanding their perspectives in ways neither had anticipated. This complicated dance of conflict and collaboration not only drove the investigation, but also began to transform both of them in subtle and profound ways. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Hank and Amelia, analyzing the collected data, noticed an intriguing pattern. The thefts, seemingly random, followed a hidden logic that only became visible when observed on a larger scale. Amelia, using advanced data visualization techniques, created a three-dimensional map of the incidents. "Look at this, Hank," she called, excitement in her voice. The map revealed an almost artistic structure, with the thefts forming a complex pattern over time and space in the mall. Hank, initially skeptical, was taken aback by the revelation. His sharp policing instinct immediately recognized the implications. "This isn't the work of ordinary thieves," he murmured. "It's something much more sophisticated." Delving deeper into the investigation, they discovered surprising connections. The stolen items, when analyzed together, seemed to be components of something bigger. Security camera records, reviewed with a fresh perspective, revealed discrete figures who previously went unnoticed, moving with almost choreographed precision. The pair realized they were dealing with a highly organized operation, possibly with ramifications beyond the mall's boundaries. The scale of the scheme was daunting, suggesting resources and planning far beyond what they had initially imagined. This discovery not only changed the course of the investigation, but also solidified the partnership between Hank and Amelia. For the first time, they found themselves truly united, facing a challenge that neither could solve alone. As the investigation deepened, Hank found himself in uncharted territory, not only in terms of the case but also in his own mind. The accumulating evidence consistently challenged his initial assumptions, forcing him to re-evaluate long-held beliefs. The group of black teenagers he initially suspected turned out to be completely innocent. In fact, detailed analyses showed they were regular and valuable customers for several stores. Hank watched, with a mix of shame and admiration, how Amelia interacted respectfully with them, gaining valuable insights into youth buying patterns. Every new piece of data, every revelation, was like a small crack in a wall Hank had built over decades. He began questioning not only his suspicions in this case, but past decisions and judgments he had made throughout his career. One particularly revealing afternoon, Hank found himself defending a data-based theory against a colleague expressing prejudices similar to those he himself would have had weeks earlier. The irony of the situation didn't escape him, and he exchanged a look of understanding with Amelia. This process of self-reflection was uncomfortable and often painful for Hank. He grappled with feelings of guilt and defensiveness. However, he also felt a strange sense of liberation, as if a weight he didn't know he carried was gradually being lifted from his shoulders. At night, at home, Hank began reading books Amelia had recommended on cognitive biases and social justice. Although he still struggled with many concepts, he couldn't deny the impact they were having on his worldview. One late night, Hank and Amelia were reviewing security footage for the umpteenth time when they noticed something strange. A subtle pattern of movement among senior mall employees caught their attention. Intrigued, they decided to delve deeper into the investigation. Amelia applied a pattern recognition algorithm to the footage, revealing an almost imperceptible choreography of exchanges and signals among certain individuals. Hank, for his part, used his experience to interpret the body language and subtle movements. As the puzzle pieces fell into place, a shocking picture began to emerge. The thefts were not the work of outside criminals, but part of an elaborate internal scheme. "It can't be," murmured Hank, incredulous. Amelia, equally stunned, continued analyzing the data. "The numbers don't lie, Hank. Look at this." She showed a graph correlating the thefts, timings with certain senior employees, shifts. The coincidence was undeniable. The discovery left them in a state of shock. Years of trust and respect for authority figures were shattered in a matter of moments. "What do we do now?" asked Amelia, her voice trembling slightly. Hank took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility. "We need to be careful. This goes far beyond what we imagined." Both knew they were stepping into dangerous territory. The truth they had uncovered could shake the mall's foundations and potentially put their own careers and safety at risk. With the shocking revelation still fresh in their minds, Hank and Amelia dug deeper into the investigation. Every new detail they uncovered only confirmed their initial suspicions and deepened the mystery. Using a combination of Amelia's analytical skills and Hank's sharp instincts, they began to map out the network of those involved. Surprisingly, the main suspects were people in trusted positions within the mall: the head of security, the financial manager, and even one of the executive directors. Amelia created an elaborate digital diagram, connecting events, times, and individuals. "It's like a web," she observed, each thread leading to another even more surprising. Hank, for his part, revisited past conversations and interactions with these individuals, noticing subtle signs he had previously ignored. How were we so blind? He wondered aloud. As they dug deeper into their investigation, they uncovered a complex system of goods diversion and inventory manipulation. The thefts were just the tip of the iceberg, a facade to hide much larger operations. The scheme was so sophisticated that it had gone unnoticed for years, hidden in plain sight. It exploited the mall's own security measures as cover, taking advantage of the trust placed in high-ranking employees. Hank and Amelia found themselves facing an ethical and professional dilemma. Revealing the truth would mean shaking the power structure of the mall and potentially putting many innocent jobs at risk. On the other hand, staying silent would mean condoning a massive injustice. "We need to be strategic," said Amelia, her mind already calculating possible scenarios. Hank nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. "And careful. Very careful." As the investigation progressed, Hank found himself increasingly uncomfortable. The revelations about the mall's senior employees stirred memories of his past as a police officer, a period of his life he preferred to forget. One night, after a long data analysis session with Amelia, Hank decided it was time to face his demons. "Amelia," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "there's something you need to know about me." Amelia, sensing the seriousness of the moment, set aside her charts and gave Hank her full attention. Hank took a deep breath and began to tell his story. He spoke about his early years on the police force, filled with idealism and a desire to make a difference. He described how he gradually found himself entangled in a system that often prioritized statistics over justice. "And I wasn't a bad cop," he explained, "but I made choices I'm not proud of. I ignored things I shouldn't have, made judgments based on biases I didn't even know I had." Amelia listened intently, her face a mix of compassion and understanding. Hank continued, describing the incident that finally made him leave the police force. There were no big scandals or dramatic actions, just a growing awareness that he was no longer serving the community in the way he had sworn to. "That's why I came to work here," he concluded. "I thought it would be simpler, clearer. But now—" Amelia reached out and held Hank's hand, a gesture of support that surprised him. "Thank you for sharing that, Hank," she said softly. "We all have a past, and what matters is what we choose to do with our experiences." This moment of vulnerability and mutual understanding marked a new phase in their relationship. Hank felt a weight being lifted from his shoulders and a new determination to do the right thing, no matter the cost. After Hank's revelation, Amelia felt it was her turn to open up. With a deep sigh, she began to share her own story. "Hank," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "my research isn't just an academic project. It has very personal roots. She spoke of her childhood in a low-income neighborhood, where she witnessed countless injustices. She talked about her older brother, a brilliant young man whose dreams were shattered by a system that judged him unfairly based on his appearance and background. He was accused of a crime he didn't commit, Amelia explained, tears shining in her eyes. He spent years fighting to clear his name, but the damage was already done. He lost educational opportunities, jobs. His life was never the same. This traumatic experience shaped Amelia's future. She dedicated herself to her studies, determined to understand and combat the mechanisms that perpetuate social injustice. My research on behavior patterns and biases in retail is just one part of a larger project, she continued. I'm developing models that can be applied in various contexts: security, judicial system, hiring, to identify and mitigate unconscious biases. Hank listened attentively, seeing Amelia in a new light. He began to understand the passion and dedication she brought to the work. When I discovered what was happening in this mall, Amelia concluded, I saw an opportunity to make a real difference. It's not just about catching criminals, Hank. It's about changing a system that often harms the innocent. The silence that followed was filled with emotion and mutual understanding. Hank and Amelia realized that, despite their differences, they shared a deep desire for justice and change. I'm with you on this, Amelia, Hank finally said, his voice firm with new determination. Let's do the right thing. The investigation took an even darker turn when Hank and Amelia discovered evidence implicating Hank's direct supervisor in the criminal scheme. This revelation hit Hank like a punch to the gut. Mr. Thompson, the mall's head of security, had always been a respected figure for Hank. A mentor and friend, Thompson had been the one who gave Hank a second chance after his troubled departure from the police force. It can't be, murmured Hank, staring at the indisputable evidence on the computer screen. Amelia, sensing the emotional impact of this discovery on Hank, placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, Hank. I know how much you respected him. The evidence was clear. Camera records showed Thompson in secret meetings with other suspects. Access logs indicated his presence in restricted areas at suspicious times, and financial analyses revealed inexplicable deposits in his accounts. Hank found himself replaying past conversations and interactions with Thompson, now seeing them in a new light. Small comments, seemingly insignificant decisions, all took on a new sinister meaning. How could I have been so blind? Hank asked aloud, guilt and anger mixing in his voice. Amelia, always the voice of reason, reminded Hank. Don't blame yourself. People in positions of trust are often the most skilled at hiding their actions. This discovery not only complicated the investigation, but also put Hank and Amelia in an even more precarious position. Thompson, with his intimate knowledge of the security systems and his position of authority, represented a significant threat. We need to be more careful than ever, said Amelia, her mind already working through the implications of this new information. Hank nodded, feeling the weight of the betrayal and the responsibility that now fell on his shoulders. You're right. We can't trust anyone but ourselves now. This revelation marked a turning point in the investigation and the partnership between Hank and Amelia. United by truth and shared danger, they knew they could only rely on each other to unravel the mystery and bring justice. The atmosphere at the mall changed drastically after Hank and Amelia discovered the involvement of Hank's supervisor in the criminal scheme. What had once been a discreet investigation turned into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. It started with small incidents, important files mysteriously disappearing, surveillance equipment experiencing inexplicable malfunctions. But soon, the situation escalated. Hank found his locker broken into key with a threatening message left behind. Amelia, on the other hand, received anonymous emails suggesting she mind her own business. One particularly tense afternoon, Hank and Amelia were reviewing evidence in a file room when the lights suddenly went out. The sound of footsteps echoed down the dark corridor, drawing closer. "Quick!" whispered Hank, pulling Amelia behind a shelf. They remained still, barely breathing, as a shadowy figure searched the room. In that moment, trapped in the darkness and surrounded by danger, Hank and Amelia realized how much they depended on each other. It wasn't just about solving the case now. It was about survival. In the days that followed, they developed an elaborate system of communication and mutual surveillance. Secret codes, alternative meeting spots, unpredictable routines, all to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. Amelia applied her analytical skills to predict the criminals' possible moves, while Hank used his security experience to devise protection strategies. "I never thought I'd say this," admitted Hank one night, after a particularly stressful day. "But I'm glad we're in this together." Amelia smiled, the exhaustion evident in her eyes, but a fierce determination still present. "We make a good team, Hank. We'll solve this together." As the threats increased, so did the bond between them. Hank and Amelia discovered a strength and resilience they didn't know they possessed, fueled by mutual trust and a shared desire for justice. The climax of the investigation came on a rainy night when Hank and Amelia finally gathered enough evidence to expose the entire criminal scheme. Armed with a folder full of incriminating documents, they were preparing to leave the mall and contact the authorities. However, as they turned a corner, they came face to face with Mr. Thompson and two other high-ranking employees involved in the scheme. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, both sides realizing instantly what was at stake. "Run!" shouted Hank, pushing Amelia to the opposite side. What followed was a frantic chase through the empty mall corridors after closing hours. Hank and Amelia ran desperately, their steps echoing in the deserted galleries, while their pursuers gained ground. Amelia, with her detailed knowledge of the mall's layout, guided them through shortcuts and little-known passages. Hank, for his part, used his experience to create distractions and obstacles for their pursuers. In a moment of brilliance, Amelia had an idea. "The sprinkler system," she panted. "We can activate it to buy time." Hank nodded, understanding immediately. They headed to the control room, where Amelia quickly hacked the system, activating the sprinklers in various areas of the mall. The ensuing chaos gave them a few precious moments of advantage. Soaked and breathless, Hank and Amelia continued their escape, now with the sound of fire truck sirens approaching in the background. The wet floor made each step a challenge, but also hindered their pursuers. Progress. Reaching the main atrium, they found themselves momentarily exposed. Mr. Thompson and his accomplices emerged from a side corridor, blocking the path to the main exit. "Game over," said Thompson, his voice cold against the surrounding chaos. "Hand over the documents, and maybe we can come to an agreement." Hank stepped forward, positioning himself protectively in front of Amelia. "There's no possible agreement, Thompson. What you've done is unforgivable." Meanwhile, Amelia discreetly activated the live streaming app on her phone, capturing the entire scene. The tension in the air was palpable. Water droplets fell from the sprinklers, creating a translucent curtain between the two groups. The sound of sirens grew louder. At this critical moment, the main doors burst open abruptly. A team of police officers, alerted by the sprinkler alarm, stormed in. "Police! Everyone freeze!" shouted the team leader. Thompson's expression shifted from confidence to despair in a matter of seconds. He and his associates, caught off guard, had no choice but to surrender. Hank and Amelia, exhausted but triumphant, handed the documents to the authorities. As the officers handcuffed the criminals, the two exchanged a look of mutual relief and satisfaction. "We did it," said Amelia, a tired smile on her face. Hank nodded, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Yes, we did." together. As they were escorted out of the mall to give their statements, Hank and Amelia reflected on the journey that brought them here. What started as a reluctant partnership had turned into a deep friendship and a powerful collaboration. The mall case was resolved, but both knew this was just the beginning. There was much more work to be done to fight injustice and prejudice, and now they had each other as allies in this ongoing mission. As the squad car lights flashed in the rainy night, Hank and Amelia walked side by side, ready to face whatever the future held, stronger because of the lessons they had learned and the prejudices they had overcome together. Hank realized that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous for Amelia. Drawing on his skills acquired as a police officer, he devised a meticulous plan to ensure her safety. He implemented unpredictable routines, established secret communication codes, and taught Amelia basic self-defense techniques. Hank mapped out escape routes in the mall, identified blind spots in the security cameras, and created a network of trusted allies among the staff. He also instructed her on how to identify suspicious behavior and potentially dangerous situations. At night, Hank discreetly patrolled around Amelia's residence, ensuring she arrived home safely. His dedication went beyond professional duty. Hank felt a personal responsibility to protect Amelia, recognizing in her not just a colleague but a valuable friend. Amelia dove deep into her data analysis, determined to unravel the intricate scheme plaguing the mall. Using advanced machine learning algorithms, she began identifying subtle patterns in financial transactions and inventory records. Sleepless nights were spent creating predictive models and complex visualizations that revealed previously invisible anomalies. Amelia uncovered an elaborate network of fake transactions and stock manipulation that spanned several departments. Her innovative approach allowed her to map the connections between different actors in the scheme, revealing a surprising hierarchy. With each new discovery, Amelia felt closer to exposing the truth. Her tireless dedication and analytical skill proved crucial, turning a mountain of seemingly disconnected data into a solid and irrefutable case. As Hank and Amelia deepened their investigation, they discovered that the scheme at the mall was just the tip of the iceberg. Analyzing financial records and intercepted communications, they realized connections with other businesses in the city. A complex pattern emerged, revealing a network of interconnected businesses involved in questionable practices. They found that influential figures from the local business community were implicated, including politicians and civic leaders. The conspiracy seemed to have deep roots, affecting various sectors of the local economy. Hank and Amelia faced an ethical dilemma. Exposing everything could cause an economic tremor in the city, potentially affecting many innocents. However, remaining silent would mean allowing the injustice to continue. They realized they were dealing with something much bigger than they initially imagined, and that their actions would have far-reaching consequences. On a quiet night, after hours of investigation, Hank finally mustered the courage to confront his inner demons. With a trembling voice, he began to tell Amelia about his past as a police officer, the misguided decisions he made, and the prejudices he cultivated over the years. Hank admitted that he initially judged her unfairly, based on ingrained stereotypes. Tears in his eyes, he expressed deep regret for his past actions and how he treated Amelia at the beginning of their partnership. "I was wrong, Amelia. So wrong. You've taught me more about integrity and justice than all my years on the police force. Can I ask for your forgiveness?" Amelia, moved by Hank's vulnerability, responded with compassion, acknowledging the courage needed for such an admission and the growth he had demonstrated. With a heavy heart, Amelia decided to share her own painful story with Hank. She spoke about her older brother, a bright and ambitious young man whose life was drastically altered by an incident with the police. Amelia described how her brother was wrongly accused of a crime he didn't commit, based solely on his appearance and background. Despite eventually being exonerated, the damage was already done. Educational and job opportunities were lost, and her brother's trust in the justice system was irreparably damaged. "That's why I dedicated myself to this work, Hank," Amelia explained, tears in her eyes. "I want to change the system from the inside out, so no one else has to go through what my brother did." Hank listened in silence, feeling the weight of responsibility and the depth of Amelia's commitment to justice. With all the evidence gathered, Hank and Amelia presented their findings to the mall's board and the relevant authorities. Using a combination of meticulous analytical data and compelling testimonies, they built an irrefutable case. The presentation was a tour de force, with Amelia explaining the complex financial patterns and Hank providing crucial insights into the mall's internal operations. The revelation caused shock and consternation, but also relief at finally bringing the truth to light. The board acted quickly, implementing significant changes in the mall's management and policies. Hank and Amelia were praised for their courage and dedication. The mall, now free from the scheme that plagued it, began a process of renewal and recovery. The unlikely partnership between Hank and Amelia not only saved the mall but also set a new standard for integrity and transparency. Inspired by Amelia's dedication and vision, Hank made a decision that would change the course of his career. He offered to collaborate on Amelia's research on biases and injustices in the security system. Hank realized that his experience as a former police officer and security guard could provide valuable insights for Amelia's work. He committed to sharing his observations on problematic practices and helping develop new training protocols. Together, they began working on an innovative program that combined Amelia's data analysis with Hank's practical knowledge. Their goal was to create a fairer and more effective security model that could be implemented not just in malls, but across various sectors. This new partnership represented not only an opportunity for Hank's redemption, but also a significant step toward positive systemic change.